The most dangerous moment in any civilization is not when it collapses, but when it forgets that alternatives ever existed. The first keynote speaks about memory not as nostalgia, but as power. For thousands of years, human beings lived inside worlds shaped by nature, community, and slow change. Knowledge moved at the speed of speech and travel. Decisions were made by people who could see the consequences with their own eyes. Even when societies were unjust, individuals still experienced reality directly, without invisible systems filtering what deserved attention. The generation that remembers these carries something rare, a lived understanding that reality is larger than any interface. Today, memory itself is becoming obsolete, not because people cannot remember, but because they are no longer required to. When every fact is searchable, every face recognizable by software, every moment archived, the human brain slowly relinquishes its role as a storyteller and sense-maker. This changes how power operates. In earlier eras, rulers controlled land, armies, and resources. Now, influence flows through the control of narratives and attention. Those who remember a time before this shift can still feel the difference. They know what it means to think without interruption, to be bored without panic, to disagree without being instantly categorized. Once that generation disappears, society will lose its last internal comparison. People will still talk about freedom, but they will mean the freedom to choose between options preselected by systems they do not understand. They will speak about individuality, while their desires are increasingly predicted before they are consciously formed. This is not a conspiracy. It is a structural outcome of data-driven systems designed to optimize engagement rather than understanding. When no one remembers life without these systems, their influence becomes invisible. And invisible power is the most effective kind. Education traditionally trained memory, judgment, and moral reasoning. But when memory is outsourced to machines, education quietly shifts its purpose. Instead of asking what is true, students are trained to ask what is useful. Instead of wrestling with uncertainty, they are guided toward efficiency. Over time, this produces highly skilled individuals who are deeply dependent. They can operate complex systems, but they cannot imagine life outside them. A society like this is extremely productive, yet fragile, because it lacks citizens who can question foundational assumptions. Memory also protects human scale. Those who remember slower lives understand that not every problem demands instant response, and not every emotion requires expression. They remember conversations that unfolded without devices, identities that were not constantly performed, and mistakes that were allowed to fade instead of being permanently recorded. This memory is not about idealizing the past, it is about recognizing limits. When limits disappear, so does responsibility. If everything can be edited, optimized, and erased, then nothing feels final and nothing feels sacred. The second keynote deepens the warning. When no one remembers a different reality, the present becomes unquestionable. Throughout history, every dominant system presented itself as natural. Empires claimed divine order, monarchies claimed bloodlines, ideologies claimed historical necessity. They were challenged only because people could imagine alternatives. Today's systems do not claim divine authority. They claim neutrality. They present themselves as tools, platforms, and services. But tools shape behavior, and platforms shape values. When people grow up inside these systems from birth, they stop seeing them as choices and start seeing them as reality itself. Control in such a world does not feel like oppression. It feels like personalization. Algorithms do not command, they suggest. They do not punish, they deprioritize. Over time, individuals adapt. They learn which thoughts are rewarded with visibility and which sink into silence. This creates a subtle discipline, not enforced by fear, but by relevance. Those who remember a pre-digital world can sense this shift. They remember when silence did not mean invisibility, and disagreement did not mean disappearance. When this memory vanishes, resistance becomes almost impossible. Because resistance requires imagination. You cannot oppose what you cannot perceive. Future generations may feel anxiety, exhaustion, and loss of meaning, yet struggle to name the cause. They will search for personal solutions to structural problems. Meditation apps will treat existential confusion. Productivity systems will address burnout. The system will offer cures for the symptoms it creates, while the root remains untouched. This is why remembrance is not passive. It is an active responsibility. Those who still remember must translate experience into wisdom, not by rejecting technology, but by restoring balance, by teaching that human dignity does not come from efficiency, and that meaning cannot be optimized. They must show that progress without reflection leads not to liberation, but to dependency. If this responsibility is ignored, humanity will not collapse dramatically. It will drift. People will live longer, communicate faster, and know more facts than ever before. Yet they may struggle to answer simple questions. Who am I without constant feedback? What do I value when no one is watching? What does a good life look like beyond metrics and performance? A civilization that cannot answer these questions may survive materially, but it will shrink inwardly. The generation that remembers what life was really like is fading. What remains uncertain is whether their memory will fade with them or whether it will be transformed into awareness strong enough to guide a future that still belongs to humans. The most dangerous loss a civilization can experience is not economic collapse or military defeat, but the disappearance of perspective. Perspective is born from comparison, and comparison requires memory. When a society can no longer remember a fundamentally different way of living, it loses the ability to question its present. This is why the fading of the generation that remembers life before digital saturation matters so deeply. It is not nostalgia that is dying, but the last living proof that reality can be organized differently. Memory is power because it creates distance between the individual and the system. A person who remembers a slower, less mediated world can still pause and ask whether constant connection truly means constant understanding. They remember that silence once existed without being filled by notifications, and that identity once developed without being continuously displayed, rated, and optimized. These memories act as internal friction. They prevent total surrender to the logic of efficiency. Once this friction disappears, human behavior becomes smoother, more predictable, and therefore easier to guide. In a world without living memory, the present becomes self-justifying. Young people will not ask whether attention should be fragmented, because they will never have known sustained attention. They will not question surveillance, because they will confuse visibility with existence. If something is not documented, tracked, or shared, it will feel unreal. This is not because they are ignorant or weak, but because human imagination is shaped by lived experience. When experience is narrow, imagination shrinks with it. The system no longer needs to convince, it only needs to maintain continuity. What makes this transformation unprecedented is its subtlety. No empire in history has ever controlled populations so gently. There are no visible chains, no public punishments, no official ideology demanding obedience. Instead, there are interfaces, there are rewards, there are constant micro-choices designed to feel personal while quietly aligning millions of individuals toward the same behavioral patterns. When people believe they are choosing freely, resistance feels unnecessary, even absurd. Why rebel against a system that appears to understand you better than you understand yourself? Control in the 21st century does not operate through fear, but through comfort. Discomfort creates reflection. Comfort creates compliance. When algorithms reduce uncertainty, remove friction, and personalize reality, they also remove the need for deep thinking. Decisions become easier. But so does manipulation. The more a system knows about your habits, emotions, and weaknesses, the less it needs to coerce you. It can simply nudge you, and nudges are most effective when they go unnoticed. Technology does not erase humanity in a single dramatic moment. It replaces human experience slowly, layer by layer. First, memory is outsourced, then navigation, then judgment. Eventually, even meaning itself becomes something suggested rather than discovered. People stop asking what they should value, because value is already ranked, liked, and recommended. Life becomes an endless stream of optimized moments, none of which require deep presence. The tragedy is that nothing seems wrong while it happens. Loss without pain is the most dangerous kind of loss. As lived memory disappears, so does the ability to imagine alternatives. A generation raised inside constant optimization will assume that optimization is the purpose of life. They will measure their worth in metrics, their relationships in responsiveness, and their happiness in engagement. Concepts like inner silence, long-term wisdom, or unproductive contemplation will feel inefficient, even suspicious. When a society begins to fear inefficiency more than injustice, it reveals how deeply control has been internalized. Those who still remember a different rhythm of life often struggle to explain it. Language fails when experience cannot be shared. How do you describe the feeling of being unreachable and safe at the same time? How do you explain boredom as a fertile space rather than a problem to be solved? Data can record what happened, but it cannot transmit how it felt. This is why memory must be actively preserved, not as facts, but as values. Otherwise, history becomes a museum rather than a guide. The responsibility of the remembering generation is therefore not to reject technology, but to insist on human depth within it. Progress is not the enemy. Amnesia is. A society that forgets its previous forms of life becomes vulnerable to any system that promises convenience. Remembering becomes a quiet form of resistance, not through protest, but through presence. By choosing depth over speed, meaning over metrics, and awareness over automation, memory transforms from a passive recollection into an ethical stance. When no one remembers a different reality, power no longer needs to hide. It becomes invisible. And invisible power is the most absolute form of power, because it feels like nature itself. The future will not be shaped by those who control machines alone, but by those who can still remember what it means to be human without them. For most of history, each generation inherited a clear sense that the world could be otherwise. People knew this not because they read it in books, but because they had lived through change with their own bodies and minds. They remembered life before certain tools, before certain habits, before certain systems shaped their days. Today, something rare is happening. The last generation that remembers life before the digital takeover of attention, identity, and decision-making is slowly disappearing. When that memory goes with them, humanity does not simply lose nostalgia. It loses a reference point. And without reference points, even the most radical transformations feel natural and inevitable. Memory is not just a storage of facts. It is a form of power. Those who remember life before constant surveillance, before algorithmic prediction, before the transformation of every emotion into data, can still compare. They can feel the difference between choice and suggestion, between connection and exposure, between knowledge and noise. This ability to compare creates distance, and distance creates freedom. A person who can step back mentally can ask whether the system serves human values or whether humans are quietly adapting themselves to serve the system. Once no one remembers a different way of living, this question itself begins to disappear. The most effective form of control has never been violence. It has always been normalization. When a system becomes invisible, it becomes unquestionable. Children born into a world of constant tracking do not experience it as surveillance, they experience it as reality. A life where every step is counted, every preference recorded, and every interaction analyzed feels normal when there is no memory of privacy as a lived condition. In such a world, freedom does not vanish overnight. It dissolves slowly, not because it is taken away, but because it is no longer recognized. Technology does not destroy human agency by force. It replaces it. Rough convenience. Every tool promises to save time, reduce effort, and eliminate uncertainty. Over time, however, the price of convenience becomes dependence. Decisions once made through reflection are outsourced to systems that calculate faster and know more about individual behavior than individuals know about themselves. The danger is not that these systems are evil. The danger is that they are efficient. Efficiency has a way of overriding values without ever openly confronting them. What disappears first in such a transformation is deep attention. When the mind is trained to switch constantly, it loses the ability to stay. Staying with a problem, a thought, or a feeling long enough to understand it becomes uncomfortable. This is not a personal failure, it is an environmental outcome. Minds adapt to the conditions they are placed in. A distracted environment produces distracted consciousness. Over time, this changes not just habits, but identity itself. A person becomes less of a thinker and more of a responder, less of an explorer and more of a consumer. The loss of deep attention has consequences far beyond productivity. It reshapes morality, politics, and meaning. Ethical decisions require patience, complexity, and the ability to hold conflicting ideas at once. When attention fragments, moral reasoning simplifies. Complex realities are reduced to slogans, and nuance is experienced as weakness. In such conditions, manipulation becomes easy, not because people are ignorant, but because they are exhausted. Exhausted minds do not rebel, they seek relief. Those who remember a slower world often struggle to explain what is being lost. Data can measure clicks, heart rates, and screen time. But it cannot measure the texture of presence. It cannot quantify the feeling of walking without a destination, thinking without interruption, or being unreachable without anxiety. These experiences shaped human psychology for thousands of years. Their disappearance may seem insignificant in the short term, but in the long term, it alters what it means to be human. When memory of an alternative disappears, the present becomes permanent. This is when power reaches its most advanced form. No censorship is required, because there is nothing left to censor. No resistance is needed, because there is nothing left to resist. People do not feel oppressed, they feel optimized. They do not feel controlled. They feel guided. The system does not say no. It simply suggests, nudges, and predicts until human choice becomes indistinguishable from machine recommendation. The responsibility of the generation that still remembers is not to reject technology or to glorify the past. It is to preserve perspective. Perspective is the ability to say that progress is not a straight line and that not every improvement improves the human condition. Teaching this perspective is difficult because it cannot be transmitted through instructions alone. It must be embodied through habits, boundaries, and examples. It means showing that silence is not empty, that boredom is not dangerous, and that difficulty is not always a problem to be solved. Education in the coming decades will not fail because of lack of information. It will fail because of lack of meaning. Information is abundant, cheap, and instant. Meaning requires time, context, and memory. A society that forgets how to remember cannot teach wisdom, only skills. Skills can be automated, replaced, and optimized. Wisdom cannot. Once wisdom disappears, humanity becomes highly capable and deeply directionless at the same time. The end of this remembering generation marks a turning point. Either memory becomes an intentional practice, or humanity fully adapts to a world designed without reference to its psychological limits. The question is not whether technology will advance, it will. The question is whether humans will remember that they are more than systems to be optimized. If memory survives as a living force, humans may still guide their tools. If it fades, the tools will quietly guide humanity, and no one will remember that it could have been otherwise. So let this be the moment where remembering becomes a conscious act. Not remembering facts, dates, or old technologies, but remembering what it felt like to be fully human in a world that did not constantly demand attention, measurement, and optimization. Progress should expand human freedom, not quietly replace it. The future does not belong to those who move fastest, but to those who can still pause, reflect, and choose with awareness. If we lose memory, we lose direction. But if we protect it, even in small daily acts, we keep alive the ability to shape what comes next, rather than simply adapt to it. Thank you for giving your time, your attention, and your presence. In an age where attention is constantly pulled away, choosing to listen deeply is an act of strength. Thank you to every viewer and every audience member who stays curious, who questions what feels normal, and who refuses to forget what it truly means to live consciously.
So you are a military, you studied the military history of the Middle East. Did you ever expect to now be the foremost expert on all things AI and whether we are doomed as humanity?
I'm not the foremost expert, but I didn't expect to be talking about AI with such an audience. As you said, I was originally a specialist in medieval military history, and but the Middle Ages are coming back in many ways.
Okay. Okay, we're going to get into that. And then feel free to get into that as I ask you this first question. You call artificial intelligence, or alien intelligence as you refer to it throughout your writing, the rise of a new species that could replace Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
Sapiens, your prior book. What does it mean to be human right now?
To be aware that for the first time we have real competition on the planet. That we have been the most intelligent species by far for tens of thousands of years, and this is how we got from being an insignificant ape in a corner of Africa to being the absolute rulers of the planet and of the ecosystem. And now we are creating something that could compete with us in the very near future. The most important thing to know about AI is that it is not a tool like all previous human inventions. It is an agent. An agent in the sense that it can make decisions independently of us. It can invent new ideas. It can learn and change by itself. All previous human inventions, whether a printing press or the atom bomb, they are tools that empower us.
They needed us.
They need us because a printing press cannot write books by itself, and it cannot decide which books to print. An atom bomb cannot invent the next more powerful bomb, and an atom bomb cannot decide what to attack. An AI weapon can decide by itself which target to attack and design the next generation of weapons by itself.
So this is why you argue that AI is potentially, or it sounds like you're saying is, by the way now, but you've written in the past, potentially more momentous in the invention of the telegraph, the printing press, even writing. But the way you talk about it in Nexus is that it is a baby.
Yeah.
Because it learns from us. And therefore, your argument is that we, especially the powerful leaders in this room, have a lot of responsibility because how we act is how AI will be. You cannot expect to lie and cheat and have benevolent AI.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Yeah, there is a big discussion around the world about AI alignment. Okay, we are creating these increasingly super intelligent, very powerful new agents. How do we make sure that these agents remain aligned with human goals and with the benefit of humanity, that they do what is good for us? And so there is a lot of research and a lot of efforts focused on the idea that if we can design these AIs in a certain way, if we can teach them certain principles, if we can code into them certain goals, then we will be safe. But there are two main problems with this approach. First of all, again, the very definition of AI is that it can learn and change by itself. If you have a machine that can act automatically, but only following pre-programmed orders, then, it's a coffee machine. It can do something automatically, produce coffee, but it cannot decide or invent anything by itself. It's not an AI. So when you design an AI, by definition, this thing is going to do all kinds of things which you cannot anticipate. If you can anticipate everything it will do, it is by definition not an AI. So that's one problem. The other even bigger problem, that we can think about AI, like you said, like a baby or a child. And you can educate a child to the best of your ability, and he or she will still surprise you, for better or worse. No matter how much you invest in their education, they are independent agents. They might eventually do something which will surprise you and even horrify you. The other thing is, everybody who has any knowledge of education knows that in the education of children, it matters far less what you tell them
And what you do.
it matters far more what you do.
Yeah.
If you tell your kids, don't lie, and your kids watch you lying to other people, they will copy your behavior, not your instructions. Now, if we have now these big projects to educate the AIs, not to lie, but the AIs are given access to the world, and they watch how humans behave, and they see some of the most powerful humans on the planet, including their parents, lying, the AI will copy the behavior. People who think that I can run, say, this huge AI corporation, and while I'm lying, I will teach my AIs not to lie, it will not work. It will copy your behavior.
One of your central arguments is that we as society writ large have focused way too much on power. And you also make the argument that some disagree with or will call counterintuitive, that more information is great for democracies because you say all information is not true information, et cetera.
Most information is not the truth.
Right.
There's a huge confusion between information and truth.
Yeah.
Yes, some information is true,
Yeah.
and you get information to get to know the truth, but generally, the truth is a very, very small subset of most of the information in the universe.
So if we are focusing too much on power, and that's a very important distinction, you say this is why we have failed as people largely to answer actually the biggest questions of life. If we can be more productive, we can be richer, we can have stronger militaries. But many of us can't answer the question, as you write, who are we? What should we aspire to? And what is a good life? Essentially, we are accumulating power, not wisdom.
Yeah.
How can we change it?
And that's the big problem of human history, for thousands of years. We are extremely good in acquiring more power. Again, this is how we transform ourselves from an insignificant ape in East Africa into the ruler of the world. We can fly to the moon, we can split the atom. But we don't seem to be significantly happier than we were in the Stone Age. We don't know how to translate power into happiness. Again, you look at the most powerful people on the planet, they don't seem to be the happiest people on the planet. So there is a very...
Do you want to ask them? There are many of them.
I'm not necessarily referring to the people in this room. I want to clarify, I don't think there is a contradiction between power and happiness.
Okay.
I don't think that as you acquire more power, you necessarily become miserable. No. But it can go together, but it doesn't necessarily go together.
Okay.
And as a species, we have not been particularly good in translating power into happiness or even into knowledge and wisdom. Again, we tend to confuse intelligence with knowledge and with truth. but we are the most intelligent species on the planet. We are also the most delusional species
And
on the planet.
destructive, you argue.
And self-destructive, yeah. The kind of things that people believe, no other animal on the planet will believe such nonsense.
Like?
Except, if I look at my own country, like, you would not find any animal that believes that if you go and kill other members of your species, you will be rewarded after death by entering paradise. No chimpanzee will believe that. No horse would believe that. No wolf will believe that. Millions of people believe that, and they believe it so strongly that they actually go and kill people in the expectation that as a result, they will be rewarded in paradise with whatever.
We took a really interesting poll this morning asking the leaders in this room how consequential they think AI has been so far in their business. And actually only the businesses they lead, and only a small portion said significantly. Most it was moderately or not at all.
Yeah.
Can you speak to them as if we were sitting here 36 months from now? Is there any world in which AI doesn't have a significant impact on their business?
It depends on their business, but in most fields, again, the question is one of time scale. You know, I've been talking to a lot of the people who lead the AI revolution, and many of them say, you know, we are already in the middle of the AI revolution, we still haven't seen anything really major. And that's just the difference between how historians view time and how CEOs and entrepreneurs view time. For an entrepreneur, 2 years is a long time. For historians, it's nothing. It's like, imagine that we are now sitting in London and the year is 1835. The first railway has been opened between Manchester and Liverpool 5 years ago. And we have now this conference in London in 1835, and people saying, you know, all this talk about railways changing the world, the Industrial Revolution, this is nonsense. We have had railways for ages, 5 years. And look, okay, so there is some changes that they now have people traveling with the trains, or they move around coal more easily. But nothing major happened. Because there is a time lag between the invention of a technology and the moment when you see the actual social and political consequences.
Yeah.
So we now know that the Industrial Revolution and trains, they completely transformed everything. Geopolitics, the way people fight wars, the economy, family structure, but it just took more than 5 years. The same is likely to happen with AI. In all fields, from the obvious to the less obvious, like I think that one of the first fields we'll see major changes is finance.
Okay.
That AI is going very quickly to take over the financial system.
We have some bankers in the room, so tell us more.
Because finance is the ideal playing ground for AI. It's purely an informational realm. If you want to have an AI self-driving vehicle on the road, which has been promised again and again, and we are still not there, the problem...
Waymo.
Yeah, but you go around London, you don't see these tens of thousands of self-driving vehicles yet. I just passed my first driving lesson
Congratulations.
here in the UK, and you still need to learn how to drive.
Okay.
So
but
the problem is that for driving, you need to deal with the messy physical world of pedestrians and holes in the roads and whatever. But in finance, it's only information in, information out. It's much easier for an AI to master that. And what happens to finance once AIs, for instance, start inventing new financial devices that the human brain is simply incapable of dealing with because it's mathematically too complex? We are going to see AI changing even things like religion.
How?
At least religions which are based on texts, like Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, they give ultimate authority to the text, not to any human being. Now, until today, humans were nevertheless the main authority in these religions because the texts could not speak. The Bible could not interpret itself. The Bible could not answer your questions, so you needed a human being as an intermediary. What happens when you have an AI text that can speak for itself, no Jewish rabbi can know all the texts of Judaism because there are too many of them. For the first time in history, there is something on the planet that is able to remember every single word in every writing of every rabbi in the last 2,000 years and talk back to you and explain and defend its views. So I have friends who are now working on building religious AIs that are meant to either augment or replace human religious leaders, especially in text-based religions. If the religion is not based on texts, it doesn't give authority to a text, it's a different story.
Okay, but I go, and we're going to questions next. I'm going to come first to Mattia Moore if you want to raise your hand, and we'll get you a microphone. But I go and talk to my pastor at our church when I am going through a difficult time. I am never going to talk to ChatGPT like that.
But it's an individual choice.
So you think some will?
I know that already millions of people do it. I mean, I know people who go for now AIs to get psychological counseling.
Yes.
That AI is their best friend, like teenagers. Something happened in school, they tell the AI what happened and ask for advice about relationships.
So let me get back to, and then the question is next, let me get back to what you said, though, about replacing jobs. This is really important, and you write and talk a lot about what you're worried about, what it becomes a useless class. That's what you've talked about. And it was 5 or 6 years ago, I interviewed Google CEO Sundar Pichai in Oklahoma in one of their data centers. We need many, many more of them now to power AI. And I remember asking him about AI. People were talking about it a lot then, and he essentially told me, and I'm paraphrasing here, that if AI proves to be, quote, in his words, very disruptive to too many American jobs, he essentially said they would be open to slowing it down. Okay. I'm talking about this, not just Google, just writ large, these companies right now. If we are headed for what you're talking about, a potential useless class, many, interestingly, white-collar jobs, so it's getting a little bit more attention, perhaps, than when it replaced blue-collar jobs, which is a whole issue in and of itself. What do we do to make sure we as a society not only survive, but thrive?
I want to emphasize that AI has enormous positive potential as well as dangerous potential. And I don't believe in historical or in technological determinism. You can use the same technology to create completely different kinds of societies. We saw it in the 20th century that you used exactly the same technology to build communist totalitarian regimes and liberal democracies.
That's right.
It's the same with AI. We have a lot of choices about what to do with it, if, again, provided we remember that for the first time we are dealing with agents and not tools. So it makes it much more complicated. But we do have still, most of the agency is in our hands. And the question of how we develop the technology, and even more importantly, how we deploy it, we can make a lot of choices there.
We have agency in how we move forward. We don't have a choice that it has come.
Yeah.
We have power in how we use it and go through it.
Absolutely. The main problem is that now the companies and countries that lead the AI revolution has been locked into an arms race situation. So even if they know that it would be better to slow down, to invest more in safety, to be careful about this or that potential development, they are constantly afraid that if we slow down and they don't slow down, they will take over the world.
So let's get to some questions here. Mattia Moore with Emotion Network. Hi, yes, right here.
Hi, so congratulations, because I mean your books are really eye-opening, and so you gave already a lot of answers through your books and also today. We as a company, we have a conference called Tech Emotion because we strongly believe in the power of mixing technology and innovation with emotion, creativity, and culture. But and in what you're saying, this is a lot of a mix of this. So what I think it's really interesting what you are saying about also the effect on religion, the effect on the soul of the people, and this is also related to what she was saying about the purpose of the life of the people that is going to be destroyed or changed a lot by AI, by all these innovations. So how do you think it's possible to get a future where people is going to be more satisfied and more happy, and also find more purpose in what they do with the difficulties that this world is changing? So I know this is a big question, but I think that is the most important thing in our life, much more than business, but more than anything else.
Yeah, so it's a very big subject. The most important thing, I only have time to talk about one thing, so the most important thing is that we need to solve our own human problems instead of relying on the AI to do it for us. And the key problem is the problem of trust and cooperation. At the present moment, trust is collapsing all over the world, both between countries and within societies. And the hope that, okay, humans can no longer trust each other, so the international system and the trade system and everything is collapsing, but the AI will save us, will solve. No, it will not. In a world in which humans compete with each other ferociously and cannot trust each other, the AI produced by such a world will be a ferocious, competitive, untrustworthy AI. It's not possible for humans, as they engaged in this ferocious competition, to create benevolent, trustworthy AI. It will just not happen. So if you think about it, it's just a question of priority. We have now this big human trust problem, and we have the issue, how do we develop AI? Too many people think, okay, let's first solve the how do we develop AI problem, and then this will solve the human trust problem. It will not work. We need to get our priorities the other way. First solve the human trust problem, then together we can create benevolent AI. Of course, this is not what is happening right now in the world.
Do we have one more? Yes, right here.
Thanks very much, Yuval. Quick question from me. So, in human history, there's been organizing principles, and you write about that so much in your books. And there's been, in some senses, at least geographically, monolithic organizing principles, like religion and the church was one of those. But when we talk about AI, we're not talking about something that is monolithic, right? There is no the AI. This is really effectively going to be multiple plethoras of AIs manifesting themselves.
Absolutely.
And in that context, when you describe AI replacing religion in some sense, I think the real question for me is, when you have no single organizing principle, there is no the AI that gets developed with any kind of intent, whether that intent is benevolent or otherwise, and there's all of these competing AIs that are effectively evolving fast, what does that world look like?
That's a very, very important point. I mean, the AI will not be one big AI. We are talking about potentially millions or billions of new AI agents with different characteristics, again, produced by different companies, different countries, everywhere. In the military, in the financial system, in the religious system. So you'll have a lot of religious AIs competing with each other. Which AI will be the authoritative AI rabbi for which currents of Judaism? And the same in Islam, and the same in Hinduism, and in Buddhism, and so forth. So you will have competition there. And in the financial system. And we just have no idea what the outcome will be. We have thousands of years of experience with human societies. What happens when millions of humans compete for economic power, for religious authority? It's very complex, but we at least have some experience in how these things develop. We have zero experience in what happens in AI societies when millions of AIs compete with each other. We just don't know. Now, this is not something you can simulate in the AI labs. If OpenAI, for instance, wants to check the safety or the potential outcome of its latest AI model, it cannot simulate history in a laboratory. It can check for all kinds of failures in the system, but it cannot tell in advance what happens when you have millions of copies of these AIs in the big world outside, developing in unanticipated ways, interacting with each other and with billions of human beings. So it's in a way, it's the biggest social experiment in human history. We are all part of it, and nobody has any idea how it will develop. One analogy to keep in mind, we now have this immigration crisis in the US, in Europe, elsewhere. Lots of people worried about immigrants. Why are people worried about immigrants? There are three main things that come to people's mind. They will take our jobs. They come with different cultural ideas. They will change our culture. They may have political agendas. They might try to take over the country politically. These are the three main things that people keep coming back to. Now, you can think about the AI revolution as simply a wave of immigration of millions and billions of AI immigrants that will take people's jobs, that have very different cultural ideas, and that might try to gain some kind of political power. And these AI immigrants, these digital immigrants, they don't need visas, they don't cross the sea in some rickety boat in the middle of the night, they come at the speed of light. And I look, for instance, at far-right parties in Europe, and they talk so much about the human immigrants, sometimes with justification, sometimes without justification. They don't talk almost at all about the wave of digital immigrants that is coming into Europe. And I think they should be much, if they care about the sovereignty of their country, if they care about the economic and cultural future of their country, they should be far more worried about the digital immigrants than about the human immigrants.
Yuval, this has been remarkable. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very, very much. I'll see you after.
The democratic conversation is breaking down. And every country has its own explanation. Like you talk to Americans, what's happening there between Democrats and Republicans? Why can't they agree on even the most basic facts? And they give you all these explanations about the unique conditions of American history and society. But you see the same thing in Brazil. You see the same thing in France, in the Philippines. So it can't be the unique conditions of this or that country. It's the underlying technological revolution.
Please welcome Yuval Noah Harari and Sir Stephen Fry.
Goodness me, I wasn't sure anyone would turn up. Isn't this rather exciting? Well, it's a great thrill for me to be with this hero of mine, really, Yuval Noah Harari. I'm sure many of you will have read the book that catapulted his name into world fame, Sapiens, a remarkable history of our species, which involved many, many extraordinary insights and a kind of thrilling narrative of its own. But one of the things, Yuval, that I think many of us were impressed by was the way you showed that perhaps Sapiens was almost the wrong title. It wasn't that we were the wise humanity, but that we were storytelling humanity. That what separated us from the Neanderthals and from other primates and set us on our course was the fact that we told stories about ourselves and about the world as we apprehended it. Is that a fair summation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And would you say that this is both what gets us into trouble, because a story is also another word for a lie, and also what propels us into a stable future?
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword in this regard, which becomes particularly important in the age of AI, because for the first time in history, we encounter a better storyteller than we are. We took over the planet not because we are more intelligent than the other animals, but because we can cooperate better. And we cooperate through storytelling. And you have the obvious examples like religions, but my favorite example is money, which is probably the greatest story ever invented, ever told, because it's the only one everybody believes, or almost everybody. I mean, humans. No other animal on the planet knows that money even exists. because it only exists in our imagination. But now there is another thing on the planet that knows that money exists and that can maybe invent new kinds of money and new kinds of other stories. And what will happen to us when we have to deal, it's not just with one better storyteller, but with billions of better storytellers than us on this planet. That's, I think, one of the biggest questions of our age.
Yes, and you're talking, of course, about AI, and it's recently come to light that one of the large language model corporations, Anthropic, has revealed that its latest instance of Claude was, in a closed test, was seen to blackmail some people in order to achieve a goal. And when we think about AI, we either get very dismissive of it. It's merely a parrot repeating probable instances of human communication, a stochastic parrot, as Emily Bender, the computational linguist, famously called it. It's every time it gives you a sentence, no matter how intelligent it appears, it is merely following a probabilistic route.
The question is it not the same with us?
Yeah, exactly.
When I look at the way sentences are formed in my own mind, like now when I'm talking with you, I don't know how the sentence will end. I start saying something, and the words just keep bubbling up in the mind. And as a public speaker, it's something terrifying because I don't know if I will be able to complete the sentence. I'm not sure what will be the next word.
That's right. You're talking and you're trying to make sense, and suddenly you've come up with lettuce. Where did that happen? It's an unrolling carpet. Syntagmatic, I think, is the technical word for it.
And the amazing thing with AI, you can now ask the AI to show you exactly how it thinks. You can actually watch how the logic unfolds in the AI in a way which is very difficult for us to do with our own minds. But we can now do, the AIs don't have minds, at least as far as we know, but we can see how the sentences, the stories are being formed in their, whatever we call it.
If we ask them to, but the fact is I've spoken to people like Geoffrey Hinton and people who are called the godfather of AI, and they would say that the most disturbing fact about these current models is that nobody knows what's going on under the hood. They don't actually know how it's doing what it's doing.
If we could know everything that's going on there and predict it, it wouldn't be AI.
That's the point. Exactly.
If you have something that you can predict how it will behave, what decisions it will make, what ideas it will invent, by definition, this is not AI. This is just an automatic machine.
The way to make that clearer, perhaps, is to recognize that AI now can beat, just on your phone, any chess player in the world. And you obviously can't predict the moves it's going to make, because if you could predict the moves it was going to make, you would beat it, or it would be a stalemate every time. And you expand that to the whole of AI. You don't know what it's going to say or do, which is why it's a useful tool. If it could only match what we did, it would be not a tool. It would be like saying that a digger, a JCB, could only dig as much as a human with a spade. The point is we have these machines to outmatch what we can do, yeah?
I think that's the main point. Both the main promise of AI is to be better than us at decision-making in many fields, that it would be able to invent things that we cannot think about, but that is also the main threat. That we cannot predict how it will behave, and we cannot control it in advance. No matter how much we try to make it safe, to align it with our aims, with our goals, I think it really goes to the heart of what AI is.
Yes.
That usually we think about AI as an acronym for artificial intelligence. But it's no longer artificial. If you think about what an artifact is, An artifact is something that we create and we control.
Yep.
With each passing day, AI is becoming less and less artificial, which is why I prefer to think about AI as an acronym for alien intelligence.
Yeah.
It is, even the word, in a way, a true intelligence is never an artifact. Because an artifact is something that you create and control, whereas intelligence is characterized by the ability to create new things.
Yeah. You used a verb there very quickly, but it's worth expanding on it, and that was align. And for those of us who are concerned, shall we say, about how AI is going, one of the main problems is what is known as the alignment problem. There's a simple way of looking at it, which is an old philosophical thought experiment called the genie. So if you imagine a genie who gives you a wish, and you love life and you're an empathetic person, so you say to the genie, can you really bring any wish true? And they say, yes. You say, in that case, could you end all suffering? And instantly, all life on the planet is extinguished. Because to the genie, they look at the world, and all suffering comes in form of life. All forms of life suffer. Smallest animals and us. That's the only place where suffering exists. Stones, as far as the genie is concerned, don't suffer. Maybe trees do, it's not sure, but if it gets rid of all life, it has solved our problem, and it bows and says, there you are, master. Now, that's a very broad sense of the alignment problem. We asked a very stupid question. We didn't think it through. But the fact is, yes, we have to understand AI and alien, but we really have to understand ourselves in order, because we don't have shared ethical frameworks around the world. How do you encode dignity, love, sympathy, passion, joy, equality? We've only just learned, if you like, recently that women's and men's lives and dignities are equal and that people of different races are equal. We've only just discovered this. And there are many other things we aren't sure about. And how, therefore, can we expect the machines to be sure? And therefore, we ask them a question, and it might do an equivalent of what the genie does. How do you see a solution to that?
Well, one of the other key things about AI, because it can learn and change by itself, so whatever we teach it, we cannot be certain that it will always just comply by our instructions. Again, if it only does what we tell it to do, it's not really an AI. So when we think about the alignment problem, or how to educate AI to be benevolent and not harmful, it's a very problematic and imperfect analogy, but I think it's still useful to think about AI as a child, as the child of humanity. And what we know about educating children is that they never do what you tell them to do. They do what they see you do. Yes. If you tell a child, don't lie, and then the child observes you lying and cheating other people, it will copy your behavior, not follow your instructions. Now, if we have, the kind of people who are leading the AI revolution, telling the AI, don't lie, but the AI observes them, observes the world, and sees them lying and cheating and manipulating, it will do the same. Yeah. I mean, if AI is developed not through a cooperative effort of humans who trust each other, but it is developed through an arms race, a competition. So again, you can tell the AI as much as you like to be compassionate and to be benevolent, but if it observes the world, because AI learns from observation. Yes. Yeah. If it observes the world, or it observes how humans behave towards each other, it observes how its own creators behave. And if they are ruthless, power-hungry competitors, it will also be ruthless and power-hungry. You cannot create a compassionate and trustworthy AI through an arms race. It just won't happen.
Well, yes, Yuval, you've said this. If you had said this in 1980 during what was known as the AI winter, we'd say, yes, we must plan and make sure this isn't happening. But it's already happening. There is an arms race. The very people who are spending the billions and billions are the same people, for example, Mark Zuckerberg and Meta, who gave us the disaster of Facebook and social media and what it has done to the polity of the world and to the poverty of the world, to essentially, in this country, as we know, the rivers are polluted and contaminated. You wouldn't swim in any river in Britain because there's raw sewage being poured into it. Well, our children are breathing a cultural river, which is similarly polluted and contaminated. And we all know this, and Facebook knows this, and Twitter and X know this, but they do nothing about it. And if you even mention guardrails and regulation, they scream communism. And Trump has just announced that he will ban individual states in America from regulating AI. There is an arms race. So everything you said is happening. So how can we come together to stop AI in the hands of corporate greed and national greed in this arms race, whether it's China against America or it's one company against another? It's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's moving very fast, partly because there is also enormous positive potential, of course. You know, in everything from healthcare to tackling the climate emergency. Yes. So we have to acknowledge there is also this enormous positive potential. The question is not how to stop the development of AI, it's how to make sure that it is used for good. And here, I think that the main problem is simply an issue of priority, of what comes first. Humanity now faces two major challenges. On the one hand, we have the challenge of developing a super intelligent AI. On the other hand, we have the challenge of how to rebuild trust between humans, because trust all over the world, both between countries and also within countries, is collapsing. Nobody is absolutely certain why it's happening, but everybody is able to observe it. I mean, maybe the last thing that, let's say, Republicans and Democrats in the US can agree on is that trust is collapsing.
Yes.
It's that they don't trust each other. They don't agree on any fact except that they don't trust each other.
So this is the worst possible time for us to come together. We no longer believe in global institutions like the United Nations, the WHO.
Even in national institutions.
Yes.
I mean, one of the explanations for the collapse of trust is that over thousands of years, I mean, humans have been amazing in building, despite all the conflicts and tensions and so forth. You know, 100,000 years ago, humans lived in tiny bands of hunter-gatherers and could not trust anybody outside their band of 50 or 100 individuals. Now we have nations of hundreds of millions of people. We have a global trade network, a global scientific network with billions of people. So we are obviously quite good at building trust. Yeah. But over thousands of years, we have built trust through human communication. And now, within almost every relationship, there is a machine, an algorithm, an AI in between. And we see a collapse of trust in humans, whereas there is a rise of trust in algorithms and AIs. Again, I mentioned money as the greatest story ever told. So you see that people are losing trust in human-made money, like euros and dollars and pounds, but they shift the trust
from fiat to
cryptocurrencies and to an algorithm-based money. So we have these two problems of the developing AI and rebuilding trust between humans. And the question is which one we solve first, which is the priority. Now, unfortunately, you hear some of the smartest people in the world, they say, first we solve the AI problem, and then with the help of AI, we'll solve the trust problem. And I think this is a very bad idea. If we develop AI through an arms race between humans who can't trust each other, there is absolutely no reason to expect that we'll be able to trust the AIs. I mean, the big paradox is that when you talk with people like Mark Zuckerberg, like Elon Musk, they often say openly that they are also afraid of the dangerous potential of AI. They are not blind to it, they are not oblivious to it, but they say that they are caught in this arms race, that if I slow down, my competitors will not slow down, I can't trust them, so I must move faster. But then you ask them, okay, so you can't trust your human competitors. Do you think you'll be able to trust this super intelligent alien intelligence you're developing? And the same people who just told you they can't trust other humans tell you, oh, but I think we'll be able to trust the alien AIs, which is almost insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the right order of doing it is first solve the human trust problem, then together, in a cooperative way, we can develop and educate trustworthy AIs. But unfortunately, we are doing the exact opposite.
Yes. And there's, as you know, there's been for decades the doomsday clock, which the nuclear scientists set midnight is Armageddon, the end of everything. And it's been roughly at 89 seconds to midnight for the last few years. It's crept up over recent days for obvious reasons. But there's another metric that I've been studying recently called P-doom. It's the letter P, which is probability, brackets, doom, close brackets. It's one used by people in the business, you know, the scientists in AI. So, for example, Alicia Yudkowsky, who's the founder of the Machine Intelligence Research Institute in California, sets P at 90. That's to say, a 90% chance of human extinction through AI. Jan LeCun, who is the chief scientist for Meta, sets it at 0. But then he is the chief scientist for Meta. So that's like a tobacco executive saying, cancer? No chance. What are you talking about? Can't possibly happen. But so I've worked out that roughly the lowest median is between 7.5% and 10% of human catastrophe of an extinction order through AI, if things are not controlled in the way you say they should be. Now, the chance of winning the lottery in this country is 0.0000022%. So what you're saying here is that the chance of human extinction at 7.5%, which is the lowest really amongst the current important scientists, Nobel Prize winners like Hinton and Hassabis, 7.5% is 3.4 million times greater than 0.00022%. So if I were to give you a lottery ticket and say this is a valid lottery ticket, the only difference is you are 3.4 million times more likely to win, you would take it. And that's the odds we're playing with at a low rate. So let's look at the bad side of things. As we've said, we're going about it in the wrong order, as you've put it. Most people who understand the science say there is a very severe chance that humanity will be extinguished by this, a greater chance than by nuclear Armageddon, in fact, or indeed climate change. And humans are not in a position at the moment to trust each other and to establish guardrails, to agree on how we should go forward. So do you have a solution for us, Yuval? I'm almost on my knees begging you at this point. I don't have children, so I can almost say I don't care. But I have lots of godchildren, and I have lots of great nieces and great nephews, so I do care about what happens to our planet. And I'm sure you do too.
Again, I think that it's very dangerous to think too much about, you know, kind of doomsday and extinction scenarios. They cause people to despair. We do have what it takes to manage this revolution because we are creating it. You know, this is not the dinosaurs being extinguished by an asteroid coming from outer space that they have no way of even understanding, let alone controlling. This is a process which, at least for now, is under human control. In 5 years, in 10 years, we will have millions and even billions of AI agents taking more and more decisions, inventing more and more ideas. It will be a hybrid society. So it will become more difficult, but we need to start with the realization that this is a completely human-made danger. We have everything we need in order to manage it. The main missing ingredient is trust between human beings. And again, over tens of thousands of years, we have demonstrated that we are capable of building trust, even on a global level. So it's not beyond our capabilities. And it then goes back, you know, to the old questions of politics and ethics, of how do you build trust between human beings. And we need to think also about more kind of concrete and immediate questions. One of the biggest questions we will be facing in the next few years is how to deal with these new AI agents.
Yes.
Do we consider them as persons? More and more people are entering relationships, personal relationships with AIs. More and more corporations and armies are giving AIs control, agency over important decisions. This is not, you know, some kind of philosophical question.
No,
It's a
real.
completely, like, should AIs have the ability to open a bank account and manage a bank account? That's a very practical question. We are very close to the point when you can tell an AI, go out there, make money. Your goal is to make $1 billion. You know, in computer science, very often the difficult question is, how do you define the goal? And one of the things about money, it's a very easy goal to define. Now, an AI can make money in many ways. It can hire its services to people to write their essays or books or whatever, many things it can do. It can earn money. It can then invest this money in the stock exchange. So do we as a society want to allow AI agents, and then this is not a question for 50 years, this is a question for 5 years, maybe 1 year, to open bank accounts and manage them in any way they see fit. In the US, basically, the legal system, they never thought about it, but I'm not sure about the situation in the UK, but in the US, there is an open legal path for AIs to be recognized as persons with rights.
Yes, Pete Singer has written about this and others.
According to US law, corporations are persons and they have rights like freedom of speech.
Yes.
Now, so in the US, you can incorporate an AI. Previously, when you incorporated a corporation like Google or General Motors or whatever, this was a fiction. Because all the decisions of Google were made by human beings. So, okay, legally, Google is a person with rights, but every decision of Google needs a human executive, accountant, engineer, lawyer to make the decision. Now this is no longer the case. You can incorporate an AI, and the AI can make the decisions by itself. One of the reasons that the US Supreme Court recognized corporations as persons is in order to make it possible for corporations to donate money to politicians. This was the Citizens United Supreme Court decision. Now, so imagine an AI that makes billions of dollars. It's maybe the richest person in the US in a few years will not be Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg. It will be an AI. And this AI has the freedom of speech, which includes the right to donate money to politicians, maybe on condition that they further advance rights for AI.
Absolutely, and reduce guardrails and so forth.
Now, this is a completely realistic scenario. This is not like science fiction.
No, absolutely.
So, and this is a question that we as a society need to decide, do we acknowledge AIs as persons with rights? Now, there are people who are already convinced that AIs, because they have interaction with them, have consciousness, have feelings. So maybe in a few years, the world is divided between countries that recognize AIs as persons with rights and countries that don't.
Absolutely. And I suppose for everyone in the room, there's a consideration. I remember I gave a talk on AI back in 2015 in Hay-on-Wye, and I said that the way things are going, there are certain jobs that people might not have. I said, for example, if you have a child who's studying to be a doctor, that's fine, but maybe a radiologist. And woman put her hand up very crossly and said, my daughter's studying radiology. And I said, well, you know, imagine that every mammogram ever taken is available to an AI and it can examine thousands in a second and make a judgment on it. A radiologist is going to go out of work. Now, who's going to go out of work here? I don't know if the chief financial officer is president of Octopus, but I have been sort of talking to some people who say that the first really high-level job to be replaced by an AI completely will be a CFO. They can be so well, everything they do.
It's already happened. It's news editors.
Oh, really?
One of the most important jobs in the 20th century, even before, was news editors. The editors of the newspapers, of the television, they were extremely powerful people who control the public conversation.
But I think what I would just end by saying to everybody is maybe don't concentrate on how efficient you are, on how brilliantly you complete a task, because that's what AI can do, especially the agentic AI that Yuval's been talking about. Concentrate on what a wonderful human being you are, how kind you are, how courteous, how considerate, how you improve the life of those around you, which is very often the opposite of what efficient people do. And maybe that, for the time being, at least, is the secret, that human exceptionalism will be how good we are as people, how much we make a room light up when we walk into it, how much pleasure we spread, not how quickly we can complete a task, because we'll never match the AI. So on that note, at least I think we should end, and I hope we haven't given too much terror to everybody. I will always say that the thing about this technology is it's simultaneously thrilling and chilling. And the thrilling parts may well cause us all to live much longer, happier lives. We can hope so. But Yuval, as always, an absolute joy speaking to you, and thank you for...
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.